A reported 60,000 migrants surged into Spanish territory in less than 48 hours. And over in Washington, the White House is turning this week's images into a warning for American voters. Some migrants stormed the border fence, crossing from Morocco into the Spanish territory Ceuta, while others swam around barriers. Dozens died in the process. Most of the migrants were young men, but there were also families, women and children, altogether the equivalent of 70% of Ceuta's population. And that prompted Spain to send its military to bring the border under control. Now, the Interior Ministry says by Friday evening, more than 48,000 people had gone back to Morocco voluntarily. Spain's Prime Minister blames smugglers for the crisis, saying they misinformed the migrants. Now, just a reminder of where this is. Ceuta is a tiny Spanish territory on Morocco's northern coast, separated from mainland Spain by the Strait of Gibraltar. And for a long time, migrants have attempted to use it as a gateway to Europe. US President Donald Trump is a longtime critic of Spain's socialist government, and he weighed in on the situation, making clear what these images from Spain mean for the midterm elections in the US.
You know, I saw Spain yesterday, and I watched the catastrophe that took place. It looks like an invasion of a country by hundreds of thousands of people. And that same thing's going to happen to us if the Republicans don't get elected, except worse. Much bigger, much easier to get into. And when I watched it, I said, boy, I'm going to say it because I knew you were going to be at Camp David. And I say, that's going to be a talking point for the midterms. Because when you look at what happened to Spain, they don't know what to do.
So why has a crisis in a tiny Spanish enclave ended up on Donald Trump's radar? Let's speak to political analyst Michael Yaki. Michael, it's good to have you with us. Welcome. I'm interested in your take, informed by years working with Democratic leadership like Nancy Pelosi. I'm just wondering why Donald Trump is speaking about this.
Well, you have a president right now who is very, very underwater on so many issues with the American public. He is probably taking his Republican Party down in terms of the midterm elections come November, where the balance of power in Congress could pass to the Democrats, not only in the House of Representatives, but the United States Senate. And that two combined is really his worst nightmare. So when he sees these images and he can figure out a way to try and amplify them, he's doing everything he can to try and take an issue to try and scare the American public into not voting for Democrats in November. They've already started doing it by calling all Democrats communists. I don't know how well that's really working, but he's going to try and take this and say, look, this could happen obviously on the border with Mexico. Certainly the American media has really looked at issues like caravans from South America coming up through Mexico and others to try and create an image of a potential invasion. This is just another way that he can try and amplify this domestically, as well as score some points internationally on behalf of really what is a philosophical viewpoint of this administration, which is to try and buttress and support far right governments throughout the country, throughout the world, including and especially in Europe.
Yeah, I suppose because I guess many will be wondering what Spain's crisis has to do with U.S. immigration policy. And I'm just wondering, do such incidents actually move voters, or do they reinforce what they already believe?
Well, what's interesting is that the administration, Trump has had 2 years to try and essentially take what he thought was as a mandate on immigration to sort of start clamping down and with deportations and record arrests. You see ICE going into people's homes and communities. And of course, we had the terrible tragedy in Minnesota not too long ago that really focused the nation's attention on his immigration policies. But all through that, and because of that, he's not actually winning on the issue of immigration amongst all voters in the United States, especially among independents, which is really sort of the critical swing vote for the midterm elections. So he knows that he's not winning on this issue. He's hoping that something like this can help him bring it back. as someone who's been a student of American politics for a very long time, I don't know really if Americans are going to be looking at these images in this tiny peninsula of Africa as an example of what could happen in the United States, or even if it were, how much that's really going to influence their vote. Because for Americans right now, the midterm elections is about domestic issues like the economy, the price of gasoline, the price of eggs, and the basic essentials of life right now. So, again, this shows a little bit of desperation.
I suppose it's a topic they've touched on a lot when it comes to migrants in Europe, for example, talking about certain countries or certain cities being overrun. They talk about London a lot. They talk about Germany. I mean, we remember they're talking about Haitians in the US not too long ago. And looking at the images of these thousands crossing the border and the dozens that died, I mean, Trump is saying these are the kinds of scenes that would be reproduced in the US if the Democrats were to implement their policy. So, I mean, you could call it, misinformation or whatever, but it's resonating with a lot of Americans. I'm just wondering how you would respond to that when they say this could be replicated in the US.
Like I said, we've had some of these images before. The Marianas boat people in the 80s, when Cuba sort of opened up their prisons and sent everyone over. You've had the caravans of people coming from Central America up through Mexico to the border. The fact of the matter is, it hasn't really happened. It's not going to happen. Certainly, all the tens of millions of dollars he spent on the wall, if anything, should be his answer to how it's not going to happen. But it doesn't matter. I mean, consistency is not part of the Trump agenda, the Trump messaging. It's simply marketing, and this is marketing for him, scare tactics to try and take these images of people jumping over a wall, flooding a border, and saying to Americans who are much more focused on whether or not they can fill up their car with petrol to get to work, that this is something that they should care about.
Interesting. I mean, one other figure from within the party who's been talking about this is Vice President J.D. Vance. He has been scathing, I suppose. Typically, let's pull up a tweet, or I should say a post from X that he posted. He said, "These images out of Spain are an unfortunate reminder of the consequences of mass migration and the radical left-wing globalist policies that have enabled the invasion of the West." To respond to that, I'm just wondering what the Democrats are saying or thinking about this incident. I mean, how can they respond without sounding like they are, defending open borders or what J.D. Vance is talking about?
Well, first of all, when you look at that quote by the vice president, I could probably repeat it word for word on every single incident involving a foreign national involved in any kind of unfortunate or unpleasant or terrible incident in their country. He has said the same thing for an incident in the UK. I mean, he just pulls the same thing. Consequences of mass migration, blah 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 blah. I mean, this is someone who went and campaigned for Viktor Orban and still lost. He threw the might of the American presidency behind Viktor Orban. They're going to be doing the same thing and have been doing the same thing for Marine Le Pen for years. Democrats aren't afraid to take on this issue, and again, it shows in the polling. They are for strong borders. They're for secure borders, but they are not for. There's also, that thing that we hold dear called the Statue of Liberty, and that is embedded, whether the right wants to care about it or not, embedded in the American psyche about give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. It doesn't mean that we're saying every single one just throw them over, but we do understand that there are circumstances and occasions when you need to take people in, whether it's for political persecution, whether it's for a terrible war that's going on and people are fleeing, whether it's for famine. But it doesn't mean that you just open it up. I mean, there are a lot of Republicans who would like to see some kind of more reasonable immigration policy of our country that isn't just one thing or the other, open border versus closed doors. And I think that's embedded in who we are, and exemplified by, as I said, by the Statue of Liberty. We're never going to. No one identifies either party as for or against immigration. It's just, how is it being treated? How does it affect me? And right now, what's affecting the American people is the economy and the impact of the war in Iran on their ability to deal with the basic necessities of life.
I suppose at such a time, it's a political time. It's
Sure.
not just about what you believe, but also how you position yourself.
Time.
Yeah. So people have to also, the public wants to see what your posture is on some of these things. And I suppose maybe the question I was asking is about how the Democrats are positioning themselves. What are they saying about these issues, and probably defending themselves from the accusations coming from Trump's administration?
Well, I think that the Democrats have learned, a sort of a hard lesson from Trump in 2016 and 2024, that you just can't let these things go unanswered. So you see Democrats talking about strong borders, about secure borders, but you also hear them talking about compassion and values of neighbor and community with regard to the people who are here. So I think that Democrats are trying to make the distinction between people who may have come here and have been law-abiding citizens or residents, have had kids here or brought their kids in, whether they're the DACA kids or not, versus the security of the border. They've supported stronger technology, stronger border controls. Mm-hmm. I don't think you're going to find any argument from anyone in the Democratic Party that you should have undefended, especially on the southern border with Mexico, which is a completely undefended area. Now you hear Trump talking about ramping it up to Canada, because obviously we're going to have mass numbers of Canadians crossing over, most of whom right now are really, really mad at us. So I don't think, again, the way the Democrats are sending the message out is, we believe in strong, safe, and secure borders, but we also believe in the values of community and compassion for the people who are here. And then there are the people who we left behind or who we brought over, like the Afghans, who fought with us, who risked their lives for us in a terrible, decade-long war in South Asia. And he's trying to strip them of protected status and send them out, or the Haitians who came here because of the terrible hurricanes and other things that have occurred there. It's we understand compassion. We understand the need to extend that open hand and open the door for those who truly need it. And that's a far cry from saying we don't want to defend our borders. And I think that the American people understand that now, and that's why, despite 2 years of nonstop rhetoric on this issue, the president is not winning that argument in America right now.
Going to foreign policy, we've touched on it a little, but we've seen the State Department actually go a little further than Trump did, and they accuse Spain's government of deliberately facilitating illegal migration. And I'm just wondering to what extent foreign policy grudges are playing a role here, because we know Trump is not a fan of Spain and his socialist government. We've seen Pedro Sanchez condemn the war in Iran. I'm just wondering if this is a chance to needle Spain a little.
Well, I am absolutely 100% positive that there's a lot of payback here, that the president is still smarting over the fact that Spain denied him airspace for his attacks and continuing attacks in Iran. That they haven't endorsed what he's been doing, and that NATO hasn't been jumping up and down and screaming let's go bomb Tehran. I think so. Yeah, there is absolutely payback involved in that, but there's also for a State Department that's been essentially ransacked and stripped of its career diplomats, the people who were the real carriers of soft power for our country around the world. And instead, you have Stephen Miller clones being put in really key positions, including obviously messaging at state. I mean, this is not unusual. They're going to have their thumb on the scale for Marie Le Pen and Bardella in France. They're going to have their thumb on the scale for the AfD in the upcoming elections in Germany, just as they did in an unprecedented manner, going to campaign with and for Viktor Orban earlier this year. I mean, these are the kinds of things that this administration does as a matter of policy, and it's just something that our countries have to live with as long as Trump and Vance are leading our government.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, Trump's first administration recognized Morocco's sovereignty over the disputed territory of Western Sahara. And he claims Morocco named a highway, a $1 billion highway in that territory after him. And he's praised them for it. And there's a sort of a big difference between the way he treats Morocco and how he talks about Spain, which is supposed to be an ally, a NATO ally as well.
Well, I mean, you look at how he's treated the United Kingdom. I mean, the country with whom we had a quote unquote special relationship, and he basically used every opportunity he could to put down Keir Starmer when he was prime minister. We'll see what he does with Andy Burnham, but it's not unprecedented. It is unfortunately, par for the course for this administration. And again, especially when he has a grudge like he does right now against Spain for the Iran war, and not to and just a philosophical grudge because it's a socialist not country, but a socialist government in charge. I mean, you've seen what he's done in Brazil and other places. This is something that they have, again, as I said, as a philosophical and standpoint from which they try to project American power now on behalf of right wing candidates, right wing parties that project strongman type attitudes toward how they're going to run their country. Immigration being certainly sort of the frontline issue on how they're going to do it, whether it's the manifesto of the AfD or Marie Le Pen's "you return them all" policy. These are the kinds of things that they philosophically believe in and will support and have supported throughout the time they've been in office.
All right, Michael, just to wrap, is there any evidence to show that presidents using a foreign crisis to make a domestic point actually shifts the polling?
Yeah, if there is a foreign crisis that I think for a moment, there are certain moments in time in terms of trying to justify a policy like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and how it justified all of our investment and in Vietnam and the Vietnam War. You can go back to the bombing of the USS Maine and how that triggered the Spanish-American War. I mean, these are the kinds of things for a moment in time, yes, but in terms of just taking a foreign issue and creating it crafting it into support for a domestic policy, Americans have a very sort of to quote Ted Lasso, goldfish mentality when it comes to these kinds of incidents. It's in there for like 10 seconds and then it's gone. Again, what Americans care about is their ability to work, to put food on the table, to provide for their families, and let their kids have a good, safe education, to have safe streets. These are the things that motivate Americans when it comes to how they vote. They may support for a moment a foreign incident for a projection of American power overseas, but that's not going to be motivating how we determine who or what our government is going to be in the next election. Even Donald Trump, for all of his talk about Spain or the UK or Canada or Mexico, he won in 2024 for what we call kitchen table issues in the United States. It's the economy, the price of bread, the price of eggs, the price of gasoline. That's how he won. And that's why he's underwater right now and why he's lost the support of independents, because he hasn't focused on that. And I think he's spending too much time focusing on issues overseas. And the more that he does that, including in this incident, the more he plays into that mentality of the American people who think he's not focusing on us. So in the end, this is something he can't help but do. It's Spain. He hates Spain. It's immigration. It's a good talking point. But in the end, it's an issue that's not America. And that can also come back to bite him in a few months in November.
Makayaki, thank you very much for speaking to us here on DW News. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Tommy.
And so what do you think of Donald Trump's criticism of Spain and his efforts to use this migrant surge into Ceuta as a warning to US voters? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.